I've heard of this place where you can hike an active volcano, and apparently it's unlike anything you've ever seen. Welcome to Guatemala. And our story starts here. Antigua, pretty little town, famous for having those amazing volcano views. That's agua, by the way. But we want to hike Acatenango, which is right next to Fuego. So let's get this started. The Acatenango hike. Roughly 15 kilometers, climbing to nearly 4,000 meters above sea level. It's steep, it gets cold, and you carry a lot of stuff. But what really got me worried wasn't the weight. It was what my guide said right before we started. He said, there's a 33% chance you'll get the view. 1 in 3. The rest of the time, it's clouds, fog, or nothing at all. And as we continued hiking, I couldn't help but wonder, would all of this be worth it if we reached the top and saw nothing? But already the hike itself is surprisingly rewarding. You walk through farmland, then dense cloud forest, and eventually volcanic slopes. And along the way, mountain dogs show up out of nowhere, and they just become part of the group. By the time we reached camp, the sky was playing games with us. Clouds rolling in. But then it happened. The clouds broke just long enough to reveal Fuego for a few minutes. We got our perfect first view from the campsite. You just can't stop watching the horizon, hoping for just one more glimpse of lava. That night, we shared food, stories, and laughter with strangers who already felt like old friends. And in that moment, I realized part of what makes this so special isn't just the view. It's the people who climb it with you. Then, the next morning, 3 a.m., the final push to the summit. 2 hours straight uphill, freezing cold, still exhausted from a short night and the day before. But then, you reach the top. And what was waiting there for us was nothing short but one of the most unreal views I've ever seen. Fuego erupting in the distance, and the sun painting everything gold. After all the struggle, the gamble paid off. The 33% chance became the view of a lifetime. Moments like these remind you that nature doesn't owe you anything. But if you go far enough, sometimes it rewards you in ways you can't imagine. This was Acatenango. The hardest hike, the coldest night, and somehow one of the warmest memories.
Hi, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I also hope that maybe it got you a little bit inspired to go out, to explore the world, to maybe even do this hike. I can only say that this hike specifically was one of the most amazing things that I've ever done, so I'm 100% sure that you would enjoy it too. And if you wonder with whom I did it with OX Expeditions. Those guys were amazing throughout the whole trip, so big shout out to them. And also, if you consider doing this hike, I can only highly recommend it to do it with them. Okay, and just one more thing I would love to share. I am personally quite happy with how the footage turned out and also with the colors. So if you're a little bit interested in videography or even in color grading specifically, then I would love to give you a little bit of a behind the scenes on that, because I just recently discovered a tool called Dehancer, or well, rather said, they reached out to me, they asked me, hey, do you already know this product? Do you want to try it out? And well, I did, and I actually loved using this tool because it just made my whole color grading process so much easier. And me personally, I also feel like, well, the end result is so much better just by using this one additional tool. So yeah, I would love to give you a quick glimpse into my color grading process, of course, using DaVinci Resolve. Okay, so we are in DaVinci Resolve now, and I would say let's just use this clip here of the video that I'm currently working on already again. this cute little dragon here I just found 2 weeks ago in Costa Rica. And basically what I want to show you is how to get from this to this. Okay, and first of all, let's also try to see how easy it is to get pretty nice colors already just by using the Dehancer tool alone. It's actually pretty straightforward. You can just go to their website and download their tool. They also offer it for all different kind of editing platforms. So if, for example, you use Final Cut or Adobe, that's also not an issue at all. They also have an app, so you can even do color grading on your phone or on your tablet. But let's just assume you also use DaVinci Resolve. And then what happens is you first of all download Dehancer, install it into DaVinci, and then you will simply find it as one of the effects, and you basically just drag and drop it onto one of your nodes. Okay, and then let's first of all disable everything that is enabled here by default. Okay, and then the very first thing that you would do is you just choose the camera that you shot the footage on. So in my case, this would be a Sony, and I shot it on the Alpha C7 II, and of course in the SLR format. And you can see just by applying this conversion, the footage already looks, I would say, okay, but also a little bit too dark already. So I probably in general tend a little bit to underexpose my footage. So let's first of all crank up the exposure here a little bit. Okay, and I think this already helped a lot. Then furthermore, I like to have my footage rather on the colder side. So let's also reduce the temperature here. And since this image is already quite greenish, let's also increase tint a little bit. Okay, and now let's enable the film look. And right away you can see that the colors are getting very interesting, I would say. So you can just play around and pick one of your favorite film profiles. You have all different kind of stuff. You have Fuji, you have Kodak, you have actually plenty to choose from. This one, for example, I also like, or I also like the Kodak Portra 800, but I think right now my favorite would be the Vision 350D. Okay, and you can see now that the colors look a little bit more desaturated, but also this we can fix in just a little bit. Okay, and then what's next? They have something called a film developer. I personally so far only used it to boost the contrast a tiny bit and also the colors. So you could, for example, also crank up the color boost and your image wouldn't be looking desaturated at all anymore. But for now, let's just leave it around 5. And then next we have film compression. So you can also play around here a little bit, but for now, in my case, let's just enable it and leave it as is. And now in expand, you can already give this image a very big push by just adjusting the black and white points. So let's increase the black point and reduce the white point. Let's also make sure to not overdo it. So let's leave it around here. And now if you ask me, that's already a pretty good image just by adjusting really those few steps. Then print and color head I also don't use too much, just some tiny adjustments. So let's increase color density to around 20. And then in the color head section, I like to reduce the shadow tones a little bit and increase the highlight tones to have even a little bit more of contrast in the image. And also it kind of gives you a little bit more of this cinematic kind of look. So you can see if I reduce the shadow tones, the shadows turn more bluish. And if I increase the highlight tones, the highlights get warmer. But also here, let's make sure to not overdo it. So I already like the image. Let's leave it at just -1 and 1. And then, yeah, you can apply film grain. if you want to have this more old school kind of film look. I personally like my footage quite clean, I would say, so I don't use it, or just a little bit. And then what else? You can also use halation, you can use bloom, you can even use film damage, but for now let's skip all of this and let's go to vignette. So also make sure to have this enabled and maybe not too dark. And well, now we just turned this image from this to this by just using one single node. And also what I think is a great addition is the different overscan options that come with Dehancer. So also feel free to play around with that. It's definitely fun to see which options they have here. And now, how do I actually come to the colors that I showed you in the beginning? So basically from here to here. Well, the great thing also about Dehancer is that you can just make it part of your overall color grading workflow. So after adjusting the image to my liking by just using Dehancer, I can then easily add more nodes. For example, I can also apply some noise reduction if needed. I can play around with the curves. I can also add nodes to adjust my HSV or my HDR. I can of course apply masking here, for example, to mask out the darker parts, or also to mask out the eye. And yeah, you can increase the details of the image, or you can of course also apply any additional LUT. In my case, I'm just using my own LUT here that I've developed over time to give my footage kind of a unique look. But yeah, let's not make this any longer. If you should actually be interested in seeing more about how I do this whole color grade to achieve this specific look, let me know in the comments. And if you want to try out Dehancer, I will also link their website below where you can then download their product. And also, since I was in contact with them, they also offered me to hand out a 10% discount code for everybody who would basically end up trying it out and deciding to purchase the product. The code is Uncle Mel Travels 10. And yeah, with that you can at least save some bucks and would also indirectly support my channel here, because I would also get a small promotional fee out of that. But this being said, also of course you don't necessarily need this product. You can achieve great colors without the product, so no questions about that. That's definitely possible. To me it's just incredible how easy my whole color grading process got after using Dehancer. And honestly also, in my opinion, by using this tool I was definitely also able to achieve way better results than I was before. So after all, I can definitely 100% recommend it. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed also this little behind the scenes session, and I hope I see you in the next one.